Hello and welcome to the next tutorial, which will be on formations. So formations can be set in two methods. One is through the fleet editor and the other one is during actual gameplay. So we'll first go through the fleet editor and show you how to set up formations. So going into the fleet editor, we'll close this because it's pre-alpha. We're going to load in at least 2 ships. So we're going to use this fleet test group fires. So when we load into the formation screen within the fleet editor and of our selected fleet, all our ships will be located on the left hand side and displayed in the middle of the screen. So from here we can set formations from what they call a guide ship. A guide ship will be the ship that all additional escorts will be attached to, and when it moves, the fleet which is attached to it will replicate its movement. So for here, ship number 1 will be the guide ship, and ship number 2 will be the escort. So escorts are attached to the guide ship and not the other way around. So by selecting the designated escort in this scenario, we're presented with 3 buttons: select guide, reposition in the current formation, which we can't use, and leave formation, which we also can't use as we are currently not in a formation. So let's now set a formation by selecting the escort and the select guide button. We will identify our guide and snaps to. And when we do, confirming with the left mouse button, like in the movement, a ring will appear allowing us to set both the range, the direction, and the elevation of the escort ship in relation to the guide ship, which is selected. Note, if you are within 250 meters of the guide ship, the radar signature will be increased. So we're going to set the current escort to 300 meters. So now that we've set the escort, ship number 2, to the guide ship, ship number 1, 2 things have changed. First, in the top left hand corner, you will see the panel has indicated that ship number 2 is attached to ship number 1 through this orange line, and on the screen, the green dotted line from the guide ship to the escort ship. If we select the escort ship now, we'll have the additional buttons are now available for use. So we can reposition in current formation. So by selecting, again, distance, direction, and elevation can be set. Or we can leave the formation, which upon leaving, the orange line is broken and the green line disappears. If we load in a larger fleet, you'll see we now have all 7 ships down the left hand side, and all 7 ships arrayed, ready to be assigned into formation. So I will now assign all of the ships around the battleship, which will be our guide ship. Now with all our ships in formation, you can see that in the 3-dimensional space, our ships are covering different positions and different arcs. In this way, you can set up different formations to cover the strengths and weaknesses of your fleet, noting that the game has line of sight firing, so having all your ships positioned horizontally or vertically of each other will block the main weapons and reduce your effectiveness. So positioning different weapon systems where they can be maximized is important. The other way to set a formation is during battle. Selecting the escort ship, right-clicking to open the order panel and selecting Form with Ship, or the Shift F shortcut will allow the escort to be paired to a guide, again opening up the wheel, allowing the ship to be positioned with both distance, direction or elevation. For this we will keep it simple, keeping it on 2D and setting it 300 meters out. You'll see the escort ship start to move into position in relation to the guide ship. Like in the fleet editor, the green dotted line will show you the connection between the escort and the guide ship. The ship's being shown underneath the guide ship, linked by the orange arrow. In a battle, when in formation, by selecting the guide ship and holding Shift, group orders can be issued to the formation. Here we see that the guide ship is in formation is selected and the number of ships. By selecting on the panel at the bottom, we can set radar, communications, maneuver, throttle, and battle short for all ships to the same setting by selecting the desired position. Here we can see that by holding Shift and issuing a group order, we've changed a radar for both ships to be off. If one is on and one is off, by using the formation orders, it'll say mixed. We can set it all back to on. Formation positioning will determine how the ships move and position themselves in relation to the guide ship. There are 3 positions: relative, true, and loose. Relative positioning will move all escorts to hold the current position in relation to the direction and position of the guide ship. We can demonstrate this by moving the guide ship 400 meters east with a movement order, so either using the M shortcut or the move order through the panel. And what we'll see is the guide ship turning slowly to move to this point, with the escort ship creating or conducting a larger turn to move into position in order to maintain the same distance from the ship whilst the heading changes. Here we can see the completion of that movement order, where we have moved 90 degrees from the original start position simply by reorientating the nose of the guide ship. If we set the formation positioning to true, the ship formation will try to maintain this exact formation as seen on the screen, both in distance and direction. So let's issue the same order, move 400 meters to the east.
We're on the way.
Now note, instead of
Waiting for your orders, Commander.
the escort ship doing the big wide loop, both simply turn at the same rate and speed to the new position. This is useful when trying to execute quick turns so that your escorts do not have to swing around or other ships become stationary targets. As you can see here, with the movement order complete, they're in the exact same position as the initial formation was set. However, only their headings have changed, not their position in relation to the guide.
Waiting orders.
The final formation positioning is loose. When in the loose position, the formation will not be restricted by speed and try to match speed with its slower escorts. the guide will simply accelerate at its maximum velocity or speed, and if the escort or escorts are damaged or have slower engines, they'll simply be outpaced. So let's see that now.
Aye, aye. We're on the way.
As both of these
Ready
have
whenever you
the same characteristics,
Waiting orders.
we expect not to see too much difference. However, we can see that the guide is already moving at 16 meters per second,
We're ready whenever
and
you are.
the escort is at 14. So we'll
Standing
see increased acceleration of the guide over the escort.
Receiving. Standing by.
Note that when in the loose formation positioning, both the guide and escort will assume the characteristics of the true formation position, as opposed to relative. So loading in the fleet that we used in the fleet editor to show what a larger fleet would look like. Again, we can see that we have just deployed in the formation that we've already set. Apologies for the blur. And we can see that our battleship, ship number 6, is the guide, with all other ships being the escorts.
Reporting.
So what does a relative movement look like? If we move the ship and increasing the distance slightly due to the number of ships that we have to 800 meters,
Aye, aye. Proceeding.
we'll see the outside ships start to accelerate in order to complete a wider turn, whilst the ships on the right will actually use their nose thrusters to move backwards, seeing the ships in formation rotate as one to move into position. Note that the battleship is mainly using its maneuvering thrusters as opposed to its main thrusters. This is a fairly slow turn in which all ships are pivoting around one central point, being the battleship, in order to move into position. Now, as we come up to the completing the movement order, we'll continue to see the formation move and pivot around the battleship, with the battleship moving using its maneuvering thrusters in order to get the correct heading that was set. So if we move in on the battleship, we can see that under play. Noting we originally started in this position, we can see the formation now set in position with the escorts reaching their final destinations. If we come back to the battleship being the guide and set to true, setting a move order to the right,
Aye, aye. Full burn.
maintaining their current positions around the battleship, however not pivoting around it, and simply turning to get to the new facing. Turn the UI off to get a bit more of a cinematic feel.
Send traffic.
Note this is a little bit quicker in this size formation, as each gets to move independently under its own steam. now finally in position. Once again, we started facing north, have now moved to the east with the same distance and direction between each ship being an escort and the guide. However, all headings now facing the same way. Note, if you swap between true and relative whilst in a formation, they will, both the escort and the guide ships will start to move back into position to achieve being the new relative heading as opposed to the old true heading. Here we see the battleship not moving in place as it is the guide, as the escorts move to achieve the relative positions. This is something to note during battle, that you don't that as you issue a new order or accidentally change between formation positionings, that your ships are going to move, and that is going to cost time and potentially valuable seconds. Finally, we'll use the formation positioning loose, simply issuing a direct command to move forward.
Awaiting your orders, Commander.
Standing by. Standing by. Standing by. Orders. Receiving.
Awaiting orders.
Standing by. Orders. We're reading you.
Note, at the moment, as the ships move back into their true positioning,
Receiving.
some of the smaller corvettes are taking a little bit longer
Quiet. Command's on the line.
because the guide is the slowest
Standing
at the moment. However, if the guide was faster, it would be leaving these other ships behind.
Standing by.
We hear you, Command.
Orders. Reporting. Reversing thrust.
Some final things to note. You can leave a formation at any time by selecting a ship and issuing it a movement order away from its current formation. Seeing that ship number 3, the one selected, is now no longer part of this formation and is able to operate independently. Again, at any time, by selecting the guide, you can reset it into formation to bring it back into formation. There is currently no way to lock the escort ships to the guide ship, so be wary of when selecting
Send traffic.
escort ships
Command's on the
to
line.
move,
Waiting for your orders,
that
Commander.
you are
Standing
indeed
by.
wanting them to leave the formation. Otherwise, select the guide. The other benefit of formations for ships is seen in combat. Here we have the same two ships set in formation, with ship number 2 being the guide ship and ship number 1 being the escort. We also have a dummy target out there with no weapons. Here we can see that the guide ship is equipped with 15 missiles and 1 gun,
Standing by.
and the escort ship is equipped with 2 guns and 15 missiles. By selecting the guide ship and holding shift, we can issue a formation order for 2 ships. By right clicking and opening the order panel, it will confirm formation order 2 ships. And by going to weapons, we can now see that the 3 guns of the same variety are now grouped, as are the missiles, now aggregated into 30. From here, if we lock onto our target with the guide ship, right clicking on it, we can select all 3 guns to fire on that one target at the same time, instead of having to issue multiple orders to the same ships. So let's do this now.
Eyes on target.
Remember to hold shift whilst selecting that order. As we can see, all ships are now going to fire. The 2 from the escort and the 1 from the guide ship. Note we are on 10% time scale. So this is slowed down so that we can quickly see, or accurately see, the weapons being discharged. So we can speed it up. Now at this point we can't see the track 6380, but it'll come into focus momentarily. And there we score a couple hits. So we can now do the exact same thing by firing a missile salvo for the 2 ships by selecting the guide ship, holding shift to select the formation, right clicking on the enemy ship to target. We can now fire the 30 missiles. So by left clicking on the missiles, the red line will appear. That's our targeting line. We can put that on that ship. And maintaining a hold of shift, if we release that, it'll only issue the command to the guide ship. We can add more missiles by holding down Alt. As you can see, the number's gone from 1 to 6. So we'll fire 16. Releasing Alt. And then confirming the order with the left mouse button to fire 16 missiles.
Launch confirmed.
Speeding the time scale up. We'll see the missiles be launched from each of the ships. We can confirm this by selecting weapons and see that there's now 12, 10, 9, and 8. And follow these missiles in to see how they appear. As they make contact with the enemy. And so that can be achieved for all weapons within a formation. So a quick recap. Select your guide ship, hold shift to select the formation, right click the target, and then select the weapon to issue the attack order to the entire formation.